Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Layer by Layer, the show about 3D printing and our place inside the industry. Today we're going to talk about SpaceX 3D printing, BigRep going public, and some updates around Tangled and the API, and culminating in what everybody should be doing with the API, because people are using it wrong. But first of all, let's pay the bills. This episode is brought to you by TangledFilament.com. Tangled is our attempt to reduce the cost of filament down to $10 per spool, with shipping included. Right now, we are down at 15, and you can get any color filament you want, so long as it's black. So check out TangledFilament.com to get your PLA today. Tangled currently running black. We may have some interesting stuff on that coming up here fairly soon, but it's over there, and we're good, and we're caught up. Everything's pretty good. All right. Last week, BigRep was officially listed on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange after being acquired by Special Purpose Acquisition Company. At the bell ringing ceremony, going public allows us to think bigger and pursue our buy and build strategy. We see greater growth and synergy opportunities by expanding inorganically. The current market conditions will only increase consolidation pressure, giving us a chance to use our public listing to benefit our shareholders. So, all that effectively means BigRep went public in order to get money to buy other companies. I sincerely hope that they do not go the route of buying every other company, kind of the Desktop Metal route of like horizontal expansion of we're going to get wood, we're going to get resin, we're going to get this, and we're going to become a 3D printing generic company. They very possibly could do that, but I hope it does not occur. BigRep has a really good product in a really good category. Large format 3D printing has a lot of room to run because everyone's realizing furniture and building and architecture and that kind of stuff. Large format printing has a lot of room to run, and the product market fit is finally coalescing over there to where people can take real advantage of it, and it provides real value to normal customers who wanting to produce the parts. BigRep has a good machine to do this. I wasn't able to really locate their valuation. On Crunchbase, it's looking like they were probably about $100 million, maybe, but and that's about the size you have to get to be worth going public, but that's the whole thing with that. SpaceX simplifies Raptor engine. Hasn't used additive manufacturing. Founder Elon Musk claims SpaceX has the most advanced 3D printing technology in the world. So yes, if you're a SpaceX fan, there's a photo been floating around of the Raptor engine evolution, and the Raptor engine is the engine used on Starship, the biggest rocket ever built. But they have a 1, 2, 3, and they see this big old mess of wires up at the top of the engine, and then it gets a little bit simpler, and then you have the new generation of Raptor, and it's very sleek and beautiful. And Elon had spoken about this on Everyday Astronaut and for the last couple of years about how they were simplifying the Raptor engine. And quite frankly, in order to build a rocket engine, there are a lot of tubes that have to go into the engine, both for effectively regenerative cooling, where they run the fuel through the nozzle to cool certain components, and then they go into the turbopump, and the turbopump shoots it down in a very specific way to make sure that it burns and doesn't blow up, and so on and so forth. Engines need a lot of fluid control, which is why you end up with all these pipes. SpaceX most definitely has to be using additive manufacturing in this, along with some certain sort of sandwiching and other sort of tactics to create complex geometry inside of a part to where it's really reliable. This has let SpaceX take the cost of the Raptor from $2.5 million down to $250,000. Huge 10x reduction in the cost of the machines. So the Raptor has been simplified a ton. It still has to retain the functional complexity of moving all that liquid around to where it belongs. 3D printing is a really good way of doing this. You can't really tell by looking at the parts if they are printed, but SpaceX has been printing rocket nozzles for, I think, almost 10 years. They have been using them for the Draco thrusters on the Dragon capsule. Has had 3D printed nozzles since forever. I've known guys who sold metal printers to SpaceX way back in 2010 and 8, really early on in the program. So SpaceX has been using 3D printing components for a long time. And they've always been economical, because if you compare the cost of a 3D printed part to the cost of machining a dozen different parts, screwing them together, and then having the potentiality of them failing, the printed part is wildly cost effective in most aerospace applications, particularly in rocketry. So is the Dragon using 3D printed parts? Yeah, very likely. They're probably stupid cheap, and they get the whole engine knocked out in a single part, and then they do the bell and all the rest of it. It's a very obvious thing to do. But at the same time, SpaceX is good at all types of manufacturing, so it would not be surprising if they're using other tricks in there as well. They'd have to pull every trick out of the book to get it done. Elon had a comment that said the engine is on the very edge of what's possible with physics. That's very feasibly true because rocket engines have kind of a theoretical maximum efficiency that you can get out of them. And it's very easy to measure how close you are to that, which means that they can test how the engine is performing against the actual theoretical limit and be, oh, we've hit the limit. This is as good as a rocket engine can get. And the best way to make a rocket engine better is to increase the pressure inside of it without it blowing up, but also direct that pressure in a very concerted way. To make sure that liquid turns into gas in a controlled and directed fashion without exploding is really hard to do. And you have to create a very simplified system to do that so that you don't have components failing in that very edge case performance envelope. So is SpaceX using 3D printing? Yes, definitely, absolutely. And it's a great example of printing solving a very major and real problem inside of aerospace. Because SpaceX is, from a Raptor engineering standpoint, they're pretty far ahead of what anybody else has ever done. So, yeah. Bambu Lab and Nothing have launched a design contest focused on smartphone customization using 3D printing. The contest encourages 3D designers and tech enthusiasts to create unique designs for the CMF by Nothing Phone 1. Running from July 23rd to August 14th, this contest aims to explore novel applications of the phone's modular features. The panel of judges, including 3D printing nerd, hey Joel, Unnecessary Inventions, what's up dude, and Akis Evangelidis, I apologize so much. Hang on, let me try this. Akis Evangelidis. He's the co-founder of Nothing. I apologize. I'm so sorry, man. I am certain I butchered that 12 different directions. But those three people. A couple guys I know. I've never met Akis. But this is cool. The Nothing phone was designed with some 3D print files that were put online to be modified. And now they're partnering with Bambu Lab to create modified phone cases for this thing, which is cool. And by the way, can I mention how great Bambu Lab is at marketing again? Because this is a get. Like, the Nothing phone is a pretty big deal. And to be working with Bambu Labs, that really increases the credibility of Bambu Labs in a way that, like, a 3D printing company hasn't ever really done before. They talk about 3D hubs and Carbon 3D and some other guys doing similar types of things in past years gone by, but they've never done it this prominently with this popular and well-known of a consumer product. People have done phone cases for forever, and everybody does them wrong, but Bambu just keeps on punching, man. Like, those guys come to play. Here's the thing. Regardless of whatever your opinions might be about Bambu Lab, about their origin and the country that they're in and all the rest of it, Bambu Lab is an exceptional company. Like, kudos to you guys. The amount of executional beauty in what Bambu Lab has done. And by the way, they've made my life miserable in a couple different ways too. Like the requirement for us to update our print farms and that kind of stuff to match what Bambu Lab was creating. Before that, it was matching Prusa, and Prusa was an easy match. But now Bambu Lab has created a fresh standard that everybody has had to rise to meet. And it's been great because it pushes all of us along. But, like, man, what a fantastic execution, fantastic marketing. I love Bambu Lab. I hope somebody does a Harvard study of them where we get to interview them all. I need to get the CEO on the podcast one of these days to interview him in how they approach this stuff. Because nobody's really asked that question about how they operationally make these decisions. And some of them they can't really talk about. But we should get him on. I'd love to quiz him and pick his brain because, like, they just did a beautiful job. And, like, everybody always says, oh, they came from DJI. Yeah, DJI really certified this type of model of hardware going from complex to consumer. But Bambu Labs has done it better, I think, than DJI did. DJI took 10 or 12 years wandering through the desert to get it figured out. Bambu Lab was able to take all those lessons and go, boom, this is how you do it. I'd love to know if they're profitable, but my goodness, what fantastic growth, fantastic market execution, just beautiful set of stuff. That's the news. Alrighty, yeah. BigRep went public. SpaceX has got a 3D printed engine, and go ahead and design a nothing phone case out there. Share it with us too. I wasn't asked to be a judge on this, and this is like my thing. So I might just do an independent review of all y'all's submissions, and we'll turn that into a video and coast off of everybody else's momentum. That's how this works. All right, Tangled update. So Tangled update. Last week we showed that we were working on Spooless. We're still working on Spooless. But literally the problem with Spooless is just a ton of tiny things that all have to work perfectly in order for this to work. The Spooless is also kind of high labor right at the moment, which is not good because is it more cost effective? Spooless should be more cost effective because there's fewer parts, but it's not more cost effective if we have a ton of labor prepping and putting on the spool. So we got to get all of that tightened down. We might actually move, we've been testing with a cardboard core. We actually may move away from that for a 3D printed core in order to get some special benefits out of that. And it's nothing to produce those things, so I'm not worried about it. But we're playing that game of getting it optimized and tuned into where it works really well so that it's actually a cost savings rather than a break even or cost even. We will be releasing another new color here in the near future. We're going to experimenting with it. We're part of picking the colors that we pick. We want the color to look really good. We want it to be very manufacturable and fitting within our flow without creating additional cattywampus problems. So the color that we choose has to effectively fit exactly into the flow of our existing black. Gray required additional tuning in order to get it right, which made it cumbersome to work with, and the demand wasn't there. So our secondary color will be more interesting, or our next experimental color will be more interesting, and potentially less manual effort. So we're going straight from the manufacturing up rather than coming from like request backward, which is a bad decision, but you'll know what you want when we show it to you. But another color will be coming here, and we'll play around with those. One fundamental change to like business model. We will probably start, we haven't reduced prices in a little while. It's been a few months. We haven't had a big old breakthrough on that. The main thing that we're seeing right now that we want to change is production flow and just knowing what's coming more better. So we may start releasing monthly like pre-orders where we release the batch and there's like a certain set number of units that are available that will be at reduced pricing and they will be delivered at some future date, like 2 weeks after the actual pre-order drop goes on. So you can order your filament, you'll get a discount, but you have to wait for it and it will show up on a specific date. This is useful for print farms who are managing supply and anybody else who's willing to be flexible but looking for affordability. What it does for us is it allows us to know that, hey, on this date, we're going to deliver this many spools because that full pre-order batch sold out. We get to give you guys a discount for this, and then we get to produce that whole batch in one big old jump, and it's very easy to manage workflow of like, okay, we need one production day fully dedicated to this batch. And again, it levels out and makes production predictable to where we're not having kind of stop and go of like, high demand, low demand, blah, 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 blah. We need to schedule a production day for that, this, that, and the other thing. So overall, it should make everything more consistent and reliable, which creates a savings that we can pass on to you guys because we're going to do drop on Tuesday, and then everybody will order that, and then it will be delivered 2 weeks from then. Production day will be the week before, packaging up throughout that week. It just makes it all very choreographed. Rather than we're going to store up a bunch of filament and ship it out as it comes out. Having to make people switch tasks from packing one thing to packing filament or whatever it happens to be is inefficient. So if we can get to a batch to where you guys, on the 1st of every month, we release the batch. On the 15th of every month, we ship the batch, and then rinse and repeat. And then we can get in these cycles and then slowly accelerate. But by doing that, it lets us give a discount to you all, creates a more efficient system, and the rest of it. We may put that, I don't know if we'll put that behind membership or make it public. We're messing around with the dynamics of all of this, of how to get it done in an effective and efficient way that is good customer value, and non-cumbersome for us so that there's actually savings to be had. So that kind of business model experiment is going to be done here in a little bit. And then the actual manufacturing shift of going to Spooless is coming down here in a little bit. But Spooless is kind of indeterminate because we just have a bunch of production hell kind of stuff to go through. API updates. The main updates are that the API is there. We're continuing to refine Slicer of the API, or the system as a whole. This applies to Etsy and so on and so forth. People keep on throwing in weird parts that like the Slicer settings aren't necessarily optimized for. And we're going to be addressing this in a number of ways. Continuing to refine the Slicer, but there's only so far we can take that. We may start wrangling types of parts a little bit. There's even the discussion that we may turn off support inside of the Slicer. So any part that comes to us will automatically not have support. This will improve part quality, reduce part cost for anybody using it because just supports cost more money, and improve post-processing for us. Because when you have random parts coming through, what is support and what isn't is really tough. And if you want to have support on your part, it will be incumbent upon you to design that support. We may apply the same to brims. Right now, API and the system as a whole prints parts with a brim. We're probably going to kill that, and parts will be printed natively without a brim, which means that there is increased risk of failure in print because of that. People, even with I know a lot of people use like Bambu Labs, like magnet stick beds. Those beds don't stick down forever. If you have a large part with a reasonably warped material, like even PETG, the magnet beds will peel up and cause curling and warp in the part. And that's tough to get around unless you latch the thing down. And well, fine. What was the point of the magnet then? So there's these edge cases that we're fighting with and dealing with and fixing as fast as we can, while making sure everybody who's core users are happy with what they're getting. But yeah, we're rolling through all that. Other API updates, multi-part orders got tweaked a little bit. Those edge calls are there. We're going to work on increasing overall documentation. And last week we had a developer kind of, I'm going to say conference, web chat, where we got on the phone with a number of developers and talked about things we were doing on the API. We will be doing that more often so that there's just a tighter feedback loop that's in person and kind of discussion based rather than just Discord conversations. So we're getting to a point where our internal development is stabilizing to where we have foundational parts done and we can now spend more time doing back and forth and kind of custom or supporty kind of stuff or developer support with our development team. We have the bandwidth to do that, and we have the baselines of our systems stable and happy to where we're okay building out time to help with that stuff. Because the team has been balls to the walls here for this whole year building out new stuff, and now we've got pretty much all the new stuff built, and it's going well. Of things that are built and going well, the Shopify app will be coming out here in just a couple weeks. Looks like it's actually in progress of being approved by Shopify right now. We're going through the nitpicking that is happening because, quite frankly, if any of you are looking to build a Shopify app, and I recommend that you do, because we don't want to be the only bastard up there doing this, and we'll screw something up. But the Shopify is I don't know if they're as stringent as Apple, but they're pretty stringent now. They didn't used to be. Shopify used to be really easy to submit apps to, but the last couple of years they decided that this is something they care about. And now it's exceptionally stringent of what they will allow to be submitted to the Shopify App Store. So that is the toughest part. And if you're building a Shopify app, you need to read all the documentation first and fully scope your project. Otherwise, you will build the whole thing incorrectly. And you have to use all of their APIs. You can't use external things like Stripe or any of the rest of it. Everything goes through Shopify. Data control is really stringent. Presentation and UI design is all really stringent. It's really, really stringent. In fact, this probably is as bad as Apple. I can't imagine there's anything much worse than this. But the build, what we are going to try to do is here in a few weeks or at some point in the future, our dev team and I are going to do like a roundtable video where we just discuss building of the Shopify app and share all of our learnings and all of our problems so that posterity knows what's going on, because all of the information out there is out of date and there are just a lot of problems that someone else can learn from. So we're going to try to share as much as this is possible. Because again, guys, for us, we want people to use the apps, and we want people to build more and do everything else. So if we can be the first over the fence so that other people can crawl over us, that's fine, because ultimately we win the battle at the end of it all. So we're very transparent about all of this stuff, that it's about growing the pie, because there is so much opportunity out there. It is ridiculous, to where there is zero reason for us to hoard anything. And the 3D printing industry, 3D printing community, is fantastically pernicious, petty, and hoardy. They're like we're all a bunch of smogs saying, it's my design, it's my idea, it's this thing, it actually belongs over at RepRap. You bastard, you're doing a thing. Just knock it off. Like, there's so much stuff to be done, and things that are undone currently, that fighting over the stuff that currently exists and quite frankly is out of date is completely useless. RepRap is not a major player in the industry anymore. We all got to move on. They don't, I'm sorry to say this, and this makes me sound like a bastard, I get it, but like RepRap and anything that was sourced from RepRap is not relevant anymore. That's like saying that today's iMac is based off of the Apple II, which was based off of a BASIC and all the rest of it. Doesn't matter anymore. Yes, Homebrew Computer Club made the Apple II happen. The Apple I happen. But it's not relevant anymore. Now we're moving on with life. The whole industry needs to move on from these kind of tiny little tribal ideas and start building stuff. Make a product that people want. Make products. We have to make products. There's a bunch of open source people out there who are just starving and working a full-time job and a part-time open source job trying to keep these systems up, whereas if they were turned into companies and products, they would be more sustainable. This wasn't a discussion topic, but it came up. But yeah, guys, like seriously, printing has the potential to completely usurp the entire $1 trillion plastics manufacturing industry. And if we all stopped fighting with each other about who did what and who was there first and I invented this, and just started making stuff that people wanted, it wouldn't matter anymore. Yeah, Steve Jobs stole the GUI from Xerox PARC. Not great. But you know what he did? He got the GUI in the hands of millions of people, and Xerox wasn't doing that. Is it a greater good thing? Maybe. Otherwise, maybe it would have never occurred. So I don't want to be one to endorse right result for the wrong reasons, or what. One wrong can turn into a right or something like that. Doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. There we go. Doing the right thing in the wrong way, is that good? Is that the right thing? Is that good or is that bad? Philosophical debate for a different time. But yeah, just in general, the request I would have to the 3D printing industry or 3D printing community is, let's get used to paying for stuff, and let's move on from what came before, because it's just not relevant anymore. Everything has evolved so far that it doesn't work anymore. Heck, you can even bring this up with Prusa. Prusa stopped heavily endorsing open source sharing because it just dramatically hurt their business. In order to continue to exist, to continue to create great products, they have to charge for stuff. And this is a reality of economics, where there's labor and value being put into something. Labor and value has to be gotten back in some kind of a way. Okay. The actual discussion topic for today. Things to build with the 3D printing API. So if you just stepped into the show here at this moment, we have a 3D printing API that allows anybody to access our 3D print farms, and you can print a part and have it shipped to a customer. This API is not the first of its kind. We're standing on the shoulders. No, we're not standing on the shoulders of giants. We're another sprout up in the desert. Nobody else would answer the questions when I asked them, hey, when you launched your API and it broke, what'd you learn? And can you tell me? None of them would answer me. But there was Voodoo, there was Shapeways, a few other people have kind of poked at it. But we are the current and only that I'm aware of 3D printing API that actually operates. So there is the, excuse me, the API is a challenging project because there's all kinds of things to have to deal with as far as the variation. But while there are other people messing around with it, The main thing that we had of value was we wanted this to be a warehouse where the shelves make the product. Someone can upload a model, get it shipped to a customer in 2 to 3 days. This way, it is a competitive alternative to Amazon. As we were designing that and structuring that, the thought process was not that this would necessarily enable integrations, but that it would enable the creation of products that never existed before. So that things that otherwise would never have been made can now be made and made available to normal folks. There are 3 layers of software that we deal with as a company. There is our production software, there is the API layer that lets everything talk to our production software, and then there are plugins. And there's kind of another layer above plugins, but effectively layers of abstraction. The API has raw file, print this, here, send it here, coming into our print farm. The layer above that are things like Etsy, Shopify, those integrations that provide an abstraction of the API that is slightly easier to use than the API itself. The API requires coding. The Shopify integration doesn't require coding, but requires knowledge of Shopify and Etsy. There is a layer above that. And that layer, I think, is probably the most interesting. If you're wanting to build something with the API, certainly there are more integrations that can be done. You can integrate with CAD programs. You can integrate with WooCommerce, eBay, Amazon, all of the marketplaces where people are selling 3D printed parts. Plugging into the API would be useful on all of those. And that's great, but there's a limit to how far that can go. And everybody will start biting with each other again. But where there's pure and total blue ocean is part creators. Right now, 3D printing requires a huge amount of expertise to create a model. Sure, you can go onto the repos and download the file that you want, but you got to find the file, you got to know it exists, and then you still have to print it. In order for printing to usurp all other forms of manufacturing, it has to be able to make stuff easier than anyone else, which means that we have to figure out CAD. And CAD does not mean the CAD software itself. It means creating a 3D model that solves a problem for the end user. There are certainly all the shortcut tools of like, oh, we can replace the whole CAD software with AI. Yeah. That's not the right solution, though. None of you should be building a CAD program that is going to build anything out of it. This is the entire problem with the industry. Everybody wanting to be a multi-tool. Do not build an everything tool. You can make any parts you want inside of this CAD. You will be killed immediately. You will be diluted and run out of resources and burn out way too quickly. What I would like to see people building with the API are very, very specific and focused applications that a normal user can whip up on their phone and get a part delivered to their house that solves a problem. This is something like a vase printer app where you aggregate like all the 3D models for vases from Thangs or something like that and get licensing for it, blah, blah, blah. And then provide an AR render of them inside the home, and then people can select the AR render, take a picture of their window, see what that vase would look like, and then they can order that vase. It lets you focus and advertise against people who want vases and cool things, and now it's not about, it's 3D printed, it's just about cool vase in a spot. Conjure, the app that we're messing with of like a custom organizer for whatever's on your desk. That app is to make an organizer. It is an organizer maker app that does not require any knowledge on the part of the user to use it. They take a picture of the stuff and organizers show up in the mail. Done. It's magical. You can do other really focused things. You can do a nightlight maker. CookieCAD is one out there that is built up for this and can just plug into the API any old time. We're working with them on getting that all sorted out. Again, messing with slicer and edge cases on those, actually, bluntly. But the very specific applications of parts that can be made with 3D printing that have maybe a high degree of variation, or a high degree of generation. You could go to Thingiverse and use the configurator apps to where someone could just basically use 2 or 3 sliders to design and create a knob for their toolbox, for their house, for their kitchen, for their whatever it happens to be. Something that generates a 3D model from very simple inputs. That is really interesting. And that creates an application that not only breaks out of the 3D printing industry, where, you can sell your 3D printed parts through Shopify now. That's a limited range. But if these things can create something that's really interesting very easily, that I don't want to say customized, but either high selection or very simple and easy customization that is valuable and important to the customer. Like, I've got this gap and I need a wedge that fits in exactly this gap and it's a weird size, so I'm going to create 1/8 inch variations of these wedges or whatever else it was, that kind of a thing. Those are things that are interesting. And quite frankly, these are something that a developer could knock out just stupid fast with ChatGPT in some time. What we might actually, talking about this out loud, we might build, or someone else please build this, someone else please build this, build a template for a web app. Maybe you could use like Next.js so you don't have to do a server or anything else, but build a template for this thing that contains OpenSCAD, a 3D model viewer using 3JS, and a kind of a configurator window. And that's like the bones of this. And then basically people could create custom OpenSCAD modifiers or things like, okay, here's a pot, here's a box, here's whatever else it was. And then by moving these sliders, you can create these modifiers, these configurators, and then you just spin these off into individual apps. A single developer could create an entire marketplace of these little individual part builders. And these little individual part builders are useful to a very specific group of people, of like knobs, hinge, this, that, the other thing, so on and so forth. All of those, that would be valuable and interesting. There's two ways to monetize this. Number one, these little configurators, you can charge people for the files that they download. Like they create the custom part that they can print on their own machine, and you charge $1 for the download of that STL, which no one's ever done before. And I know it's bad form in 3D printing, but get used to it. Make a good app. Make a really good app that's comfortable, and people will pay you for the thing. You can do it a subscription, $10 a month, and you get unlimited access to the app. Whatever you want to do. There's ways to monetize that on that side of selling 3D models to people. But then you can plug into our API, so any normal person who doesn't have a printer can then go make a hinge, make a pot, make whatever else it was without having to know anything about 3D printing, not having to know anything about design. The app is just tight enough that it will create a good quality part that varies in size and keeps them wrangled and makes sure that the result is good. Those are the apps to be built, these part generation apps that close the gap between I need a thing, it's tough and time consuming to do the CAD for the thing, even simple things. Like, have you tried to load up Autodesk 360? It takes a minute for it to load. That's time, human life going down the drain. But make these apps that very seamlessly and beautifully create 3D models that can then be reliably manufactured. You can make these more and less complex as AI evolves. You can make weirder apps. And quite frankly, I've looked at some of the 3D model generators here recently. Some of them are really good. And while they have some wonkiness in them, you could put them into a context where that wonkiness is an asset. Like design within the constraints of what you have. This is really, really cool stuff. And again, you can sell the STLs to the limited market of the 3D printer community. And then you can also sell the actual physical parts to the rest of the world. And the selling of the physical parts is a bigger market because there's 2 or 3 million people with 3D printers out there. I'll say 10 million people out there with 3D printers. But there are hundreds of millions to billions of people out there who just need stuff. And it's a huge opportunity of people who will finally leverage the scale of printing that like we've built here at Slant 3D to actually deliver final solutions to normal people who do not want to buy a 3D printer and do not want to have to deal with it. Brackets, gears, something to hold up your shelf, something to cinch together this particular dishwasher corner, whatever it happens to be, duct tape connectors, whatever, command strip hooks. All these things can be made. Taking command strips and making them in black, white, green, and blue so that people can actually have a command strip hook that like matches the ambiance of their room and it's not just the generic command strip hook. Those really, really simple things could just be knocked out. Quite frankly, as I talk about this or something like that, if our farm existed, and had the API, this is what I would be building. Building on top of the infrastructure that now exists. Don't try to build a print farm or anything else. Everybody and their grandma is going to start building a print farm because that's the obvious thing to do. And it's a terrible business because you're dealing with hardware. But you can go full software, building these little applications and these little part generators that solve a problem for the user because they can take a picture of a wall, approve the file that pops up and says, that looks like what I want, and then they get a part in the mail for $10. That's freaking magical and has never been possible before, is something Amazon can't do and leverages the infrastructure that we've built. Those are the apps I'm hoping people start building with the API. Go get OpenSCAD hosted, create some very simple configurators and connect them into the API, and then market them and direct them towards specific areas. By the way, if you build these things, let us know. We will show them off as much as possible. Because again, every part about this is about helping everybody else and growing the pie. We want to get 3D printing into the hands of normal people without 3D printers. This is why we believe the print farm is more important because it's invisible. Nobody needs to know how it works. And long term, we can create the scale to where it can really deliver parts beautifully and in an interesting way. So pencil organize, and so don't be arrogant about what needs to be made. Pencil organizers, wall hooks, the things we've talked about on this channel. We have the full design parameters for these things in past Design For videos. Steal those ideas, put them into a thing, and make a final product out of it. And not only that, they're like, you know how the internet's really built around like short form video right now? Those apps are so demonstrable. Your marketing cost would be so small because all you have to do is design a new thing every day. And one of these days, that thing would just take off. And everybody would be like, oh my gosh, look at these little command strip hooks that can be made from a picture. Yeah, that'd be sick. And you just freaking get tons of downloads. And again, it's a full software play because you can sell a subscription to the software or the downloads of the STLs to normal 3D printer people. I would recommend subscription to software with a freemium version to where people can use it once or twice. But if they're a regular user, they get the subscription. And then long term, you make money from commission of the parts that are printed and shipped to the customer effectively. We tell you how much it costs to make the part, and then you add on whatever margin you want after that. That's the stuff to do. So yeah, people have been asking, like, what do we build on the API? Build part making apps. That's the next layer. Machine control is done. API is evolving, but it has a baseline there that you can work from. You can make a lot of black plastic parts out of PLA. And we'll continue to expand materials here in the near future. Don't worry. But now, and then you have the application layer of like plugging into Shopify and all the rest of it, which still requires technical expertise and somebody else doing stuff. But if you build those little part generator apps, that is the iPhone using geolocation and somebody else's iPhone to build Uber. Like that gets really cool and really interesting really fast because you're leveraging all the infrastructure that has now been built. Hopefully that helps anybody out there who's been thinking about building an app or something like that. Those are the things to build. Really, really simple part builders. And yeah, reach out to us if you've got a demo of one up and live, and we will promo it a lot. Right now with a Nothing phone case, make a Nothing phone case maker. Like seriously, let somebody upload a photo that imprints onto that. Might be a bad decision, but something around that. Some nifty designs or some AI generated designs that are simplified and cool that do some swirlies on the back, and then people can print it out and send it. Those are the things to do. Alrighty. Well, I'm going to turn you all loose, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Comment down below if you have any questions about things that we've discussed or any other news stories that came up for the beginning of the show. But other than that, I'll see you here in another week. Have a great day, everybody.